Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our next installment of JPD. Today we will cover ownership, part 1, which sounds innocent enough, but we'll get a little spicy, do a little reflection, and maybe challenge some words we use or ways we think from time to time. When talking about ownership, for this week, we'll focus on personal ownership, how we address our mindset and behavior towards the world around us. We'll start with some ideas from a short talk I gave on this topic during a recent all-call, cover some negative behaviors, illustrate a cycle we can fall into, and propose an idea or two for how to break out of it. In framing this talk, we opened and closed with quotes from Jocko Willink in his book Extreme Ownership, the first of which is featured above. Some background on Jocko: I first heard him in a TED Talk and later caught a number of clips from his podcast. As far as his history of service, after Navy recruit training and Radioman A school training, he reported to BUDS in Coronado. After BUDS, SEAL tactical training and completion of a 6-month probationary period, he was certified a Navy SEAL. Willink served 8 years on active duty as an enlisted Navy SEAL with SEAL Teams 1 and 2. He was part of the SEAL team that seized the Russian tanker Volga Neft 147 in the Gulf of Oman, which was carrying Iraqi oil in violation of a UN economic embargo. Willink earned his commission via Officer Candidate School and eventually served as a platoon commander. He completed multiple deployments to Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. During Operation Iraqi Freedom, he deployed to Ramadi in 2006 with SEAL Team 3 as commander of Task Unit Bruiser. He also served as a Navy SEAL instructor during his career, retiring in October 2010 after 20 years of service. After retiring, he co-founded the leadership consulting firm Echelon Front, along with Leif Babin, who served with him in the teams. He and Babin also co-authored the leadership manual Extreme Ownership, How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win. After appearing on the podcasts of Tim Ferriss, Joe Rogan, and Sam Harris to publicize his book, Willink started his own weekly podcast, the Jocko Podcast. In addition to his work in consulting and authorship, Willink instructs jiu-jitsu at Victory MMA and Fitness in San Diego and co-owns Origin USA, a company based in Farmington, Maine, which produces lifestyle apparel, nutrition supplements, and fitness equipment, as well as being one of the only manufacturers of jiu-jitsu gis in the United States. He is a best-selling author of Extreme Ownership, Discipline Equals Freedom, The Dichotomy of Leadership, Leadership Strategy and Tactics, The Code, The Evaluation of the Protocols, Striving to Become an Eminently Qualified Human, and 5 children's books. I'll be sure to attach one of his talks in Slack so you can give him a listen. For the start of my talk, I'd like to show you the COVID button and talk about 2 distinct mindsets pressing that button can lead to. Over the past year, we've likely pressed that button, used a convenient excuse to not do something we know we should do or take advantage of the time we have. A personal confession: I've pressed it. There were times when I could have read more, worked out more, spent more quality time with my children, had that patio date with the wife. I didn't always do the things when I could have, when I should have. And that is a regret I now have to live with. This button doesn't always say COVID either. It says different things at different times for different people. Some days that button might say, my back hurts, or my alarm didn't go off, or I didn't sleep very well, or no one told me. If and or how often we hit that button drives 2 distinct mindsets. First being an ownership mindset, the idea that we own all the events in our life and are accountable for them. Second is an excuses mindset, the idea that we are driven and manipulated by outside forces, helpless to control outcomes, and thereby not accountable. When we push that excuse button too often, we become an excuses person. We find excuses not to do things, try to justify laziness, explain away shortcomings, and shirk responsibility for failures. I keep using the word excuses because I like to delineate that word from a reason. We can argue the semantics, but for the purposes of this discussion, a reason is causal, a reasonable explanation or justification. Excuses, as we're using it here, attempt to lessen blame or attach blame to something as a defense. It's a subtle difference in application, with reasons driving towards truth and excuses driving towards avoiding negative attribution. So back to the discussion and how this excuses mindset plays out practically. If this is you hitting those buttons and making those excuses, know that life will punk you in the near term and in the long term. In the near term, back to the COVID example, you've been laying in the cut, cashing your checks, no real static from leadership. COVID's been good. You got a lot of game time in. But that PT test is going to roll in hard. You're going to feel it. What's more, when work starts back up, you'll find yourself outpaced and trailing your peers who've been grinding, keeping in the books, and earning their money. In the long term, you'll face that fat bastard cycle, if you remember the old Austin Powers movies. I eat because I'm unhappy, and I'm unhappy because I eat. It goes like this. Step 1. I can't. You have an excuse. If you're allowed to get away with this excuse, it means someone else has to step up, and they will. Someone will find a way to yes. Someone else can and will, and they'll likely reap the benefits of their motivation. Step 2. Why'd they get the goodies? You start counting other people's money. What does that mean? It means worrying about what others are doing, what they're getting, and not on yourself. You might even start to apply value judgments without proper perspective. You might actually think something like, they don't deserve that. What are the goodies we're talking about? Job opportunities, awards, promotions, recognition, hell, maybe just happiness, purpose, and contentment. In this step, you resent others for doing that which you were unable, actually unwilling to do, or more precisely, envy the rewards that could have been yours if you could have or were willing to do the work. Step 3. Here's why. If you have good supervisors, good leadership, good friends, they'll explain to you, dispassionately, plainly, why you objectively missed opportunities. They'll tell you the truth. If you have an ownership mindset, that truth is taken as feedback for future growth, but in many cases, it's a stinging antiseptic that the excuses mindset, the victim mindset, recoils at. Step 4. This completes the cycle. Well, I couldn't because. And here the excuses kick in again. You've wrapped yourself in a cocoon of self-perpetuated justification, however flimsy, to excuse your inaction and salvage your pride. Once you're in this cycle, there are 2 lasting effects. The lasting effects are toxicity and regret. First, the excuses, finger pointing, blame shifting will become manifest in your personality. Peers and coworkers, having to shoulder the workload and emotional load, will realize that you are pushing the limits of their time and effort, that you take more than you give to people and the organization. Every person in the organization needs help. I know I do. But lack of ownership an unwillingness to invest and contribute and sacrifice, refusing to acknowledge that growth takes a little discomfort, a little pain, a little humility, indicates a lack of character. Students, for example, are supposed to learn by definition. But if they are unwilling by word or deed, are you really a student? A leader takes ownership, sets people up for success, sacrifices time, and invests energy. Again, if you are unwilling in word or deed, are you really a leader, an instructor, a shop chief, commander, whatever the title? Without ownership in your life, of whatever station you hold, you are not attaining your potential. And one could argue, not the person you pretend to be. The second and more devastating effect is regret. There will hopefully come a time when you finally come around. A time when you realize what you should have done, what you could have done, and you will regret the time wasted, the experiences missed, the relationships that never flowered. And there is nothing you can do to remedy the past. Do I have some of those? Hell yeah, I do. I don't ever want to feel that way again, and I don't want that for any of you. Maybe that's why we're putting this PD out, to learn from others' mistakes, to help younger generations be better and smarter. I need to be reminded of this stuff from time to time, and maybe someone listening does as well. So how do we know when we're slipping? How do we identify when some toxicity, those excuses, are seeping into our minds? There are some red flags, keywords and phrases, things to watch out for. They indicate a time to step back and think. I'll throw out some examples, not all inclusive, of course. If you've heard yourself say them on a number of occasions, maybe it's time for some introspection. If others can attribute these qualities to you, maybe it's time for a change. Some qualities of toxic individuals include manipulation, gaming the system, leveraging whatever means they can to benefit themselves, especially to the detriment of others. 2, making others feel bad about themselves, providing personal as opposed to constructive, healthy feedback. 3, judgmental, being excessively critical or weighing in with an opinion or passing judgment on others with incomplete information. 4, negativity, exhibiting rampant cynicism, usually due to a lack of perspective, mental maturity, or emotional strength. Any inconvenience is a full-blown drama, and they just can't let go. This can lead to long-term holding of grudges. 5, self-centered. This usually drives the manipulative quality, only concerned about how events affect them. 6, difficulty managing their anger. Loses their cool when things do not go their way. Couple this with negativity and you have a tripwire of victimhood just waiting for the world to prove them right. 7, controlling. Wants to run all aspects of something. Wishes they could be in charge of the positive outcomes, but almost always unwilling to accept ownership for the work or any part of the blame in negative outcomes. A second thing to think about is quibbling. When we mess up, or if there's just something we can do better in the aircraft, in the office, some people are very good about taking feedback to heart, even if they may disagree initially. There are many, though, who simply cannot abide any assault on their fragile ego and cannot help but make excuses, disagree, and argue, even if the person providing feedback or a debrief is highly experienced. People who quibble inhibit their development because they do not accept feedback or instruction and are preoccupied with nitpicking and winning an argument rather than focus on substantive growth. I cannot stress enough that a positive attitude will always win over talent, whatever that means, in the long run, especially in a unit like ours where the small team structure is used on the road and in garrison, and trust and interpersonal relationships drive success. We focus a lot as leaders and instructors, formal and informal, on providing good feedback and debriefs, but we don't talk much about how to be a good student, a good learner, how to receive feedback and debriefs. I want to point out, we are not just talking co-pilots and students here. I've seen it happen across 4 different airframes, instructors and evaluators quibbling after a check ride. This can affect you no matter your qual or position because it has to do with your mental and emotional strength and maturity. Lastly on this slide, there are some phrases that should be a red flag. And if you hear yourself using them, maybe stop and think about how you could have prevented the situation that caused you to employ an excuse in the first place. These are from a Forbes article in 2014 titled 17 Handy Dandy Excuses, What to Say When You Don't Deliver. Mind you, the article was written ironically and features phrases that deflect ownership and responsibility. They include, "You never told me you needed that. I didn't understand. You should have asked so-and-so. I forgot. You never do the stuff I ask you to do either. I don't know how to do it. So-and-so told me I didn't need to do it. You could have done that yourself. You're being too hard on me. I didn't think it was that important. I thought of something else instead. Nobody else has to do that. That's not my job. There was an emergency. I promise I'll do it today. I did do it. You must have deleted my email. I didn't have time." The list goes on. But as the article states, the moral of the story is excuses make you look bad. They evaporate your credibility and, if indulged in too often, destroy your relationships. If you can't fulfill a commitment, instead of making excuses, go to the person, apologize, and say what you'll do instead. It might be embarrassing in the moment, but it would be much, much better for all concerned in the long run. So this takes us to breaking the cycle. The Forbes article gave us a peek at how to do this by taking personal ownership of the situation and making it right. What do you do, though, if you are consistently convinced that others are the problem? What do you do if you're in that victim mindset? The world is out to get you, and what's worse, you don't even realize it. It starts with looking at the people and listening to the feedback around you, what comes out of your own mouth, and finding someone who will be real with you and asking for tough, honest feedback. I'll make another confession. Over the course of my life and career, I've been that guy. It's part of the journey, part of what it means to be a human striving for personal growth. I guess if I were to provide a first step, it would be to actually commit to the idea of personal growth. Acknowledge that we're not perfect and have the humility to start finding resources to help. We have great moments, we backslide or regress, then overcome and move forward again. Hopefully just talking about this helps us take some big steps forward. As far as other answers, I'm not going to give them out. That's why we have the live chat. Boom, segue. Above is the closing quote from Jocko. Friday, we'll have a Zoom chat to talk about the things you've seen, things you've struggled with, things we can do better to take ownership of our jobs, of our lives. Be on the lookout in Slack for the link and info for those who will be attending in person. As an added treat, the discussion will be moderated by the distinguished gentleman listed above. I hope you've enjoyed the video and at least got some stuff to think about, so please like and subscribe, and we will see you Friday. Peace.